The bullying issue is really complex. And as someone who works with couples and with families, I have actually a very deep commitment to making sure that children are always front and center for their families. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. And today we're speaking with Susan Raisch, the founder of the Tangle Ball, the author of Superheroes Wear Mom Jeans. She's an anti-bullying advocate and a fan of the trusted adult. How are you today, Susan?
I'm great, Rich. Thank you for inviting me. This is this is such a joy.
Can I call you Susie?
I'd love that.
Yeah, so we're gonna, folks, when you want to find Susie, Google Susan, but when I'm talking to her, I'm gonna call her Susie just because. Yeah, so I'm so excited to have you here on the show. Everyone, I met Susie through a Fearless Communicators event where she was presenting on, well, it was more than anti-bullying. It was really about building children, how to build children up so that they're invulnerable to bullying. And I loved that image so much. I love the image that you created so much. The question that I ask everyone on the show is, how did your heart lead you to the work that you're doing today?
Great question. In my former life, I was a publicist, and my main clients were television and publishing companies. And actually, I was a consultant at ABC News when Columbine happened. And that was so shocking to me. And at the time, when I asked kids what they thought happened there, almost all of them said those boys must have been bullied. Well, just to be clear, we now know years later that at the core of that was probably mental health. But the fact that kids assumed it was bullying, that kids would be, going to such drastic measures really struck me. So it actually took me a full 10 years to spend more time on it, to say, this is what I wanted to devote my time on. And actually, in the very beginning, I just started going to conferences and talking to experts and parents and teachers. And a couple of things really stuck out to me. At my first conference, a professor a researcher actually from Harvard, said this behavior starts very young. It starts as young as 4 years old. So that shocked me. And I thought, oh, for sure, the more people I talk to, the more they'll be talking about that it starts young. But really not that many people were talking about that. And the second thing was that, this whole subject is messy and it is complicated.
Yeah.
So my visual was a tangled ball. But just like with any tangled ball, you can take out one string at a time, and there is hope. There's a lot we can do. And then the third is that there are great experts out there doing fantastic work. So we don't have to go it alone, which is, why I wrote my book.
Got it. And I want to leap into the book, but I'm going to hold off on the book because I think I want to make sure the audience follows along with us here. So actually, I love that you were so inspired by a really earth-shattering world event and the way that you responded to what the kids said, and I think a lot of people didn't really hear what the kids said, or they just assumed the kids were right. And I love the way that you checked to see if, in fact, they were bullying victims or if there was something more or something else at cause. The bullying issue is really complex. And as someone who works with couples and with families, I have actually a very deep commitment to making sure that children are always front and center for their families. And the thing that I know from working with organizations and families is that the troops follow the leader. And so the thing I'm always curious about is, what's the relationship between kids who are bullied or vulnerable to bullying is probably a better way to put it, or kids who become bullies, and what's going on at home?
Right. No, a great question. And, just to answer that question, I just want to go back a tiny step and talk about what bullying actually is, because it has become sort of a catch-all for many things.
That's true.
But bullying is, has to have three factors involved. It is intentional, it is repeated, and it is about an imbalance of power. So, that's an important, piece, the imbalance of power, because I think that's where the relationship between home and conflict at home is related to when they go to
There is
school.
clearly an imbalance of power at home, and with good cause, because parents are responsible for their children. Actually, can I just tap on the intentional piece for a second?
Mhm.
So how are we defining intentional? Because, very often people exhibit behaviors that are semi-conscious, like they're not really thinking about it. It's almost automatic.
Right. Yeah, well, and intentional to me means that you do something, it gets the desired results, and then you decide to keep doing that to get that result, to feel more powerful.
Interesting. Interesting. So intentional doesn't necessarily mean that you sit there and go, I think today I'm going to pick on Susie because she wears glasses and I don't. Oh, here, I better take them off for this. On the podcast, they don't know, though, that I actually do wear glasses. I'm going to pick on Susie because she wears glasses and I don't. And because it's fun, it might sort of, it might bubble up, but somewhere in there, there is a clear decision that's made. It isn't just it isn't like just throwing your sweater on the floor.
No, and a young kid is not going to sit down and strategize, with a piece of paper and a pencil about what they're going to do. But they mean to hurt someone else. They mean to take them down, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, whether they decide they're going to spread a rumor or call names or exclude. So in that aspect, it is intentional.
Gotcha. All right, that makes it very clear. Thank you. Okay, so bullying has these three facets. And now that we know what bullying is, how does that, and the power imbalance, how does that relate to what goes on at home?
And two, I want to, actually explain those terms. When we talk about bullying and we're talking about kids, we're talking about the behavior, because, and I just want to, fit that in here before I answer that question.
No, I don't want to rush you.
Because, we don't want to label kids. And a kid can act like a bully one day, be the target the next day, and then actually be the, bystander, or what we like to call upstander, another day. It's kind of a movable feast. But when kids are experiencing a problem at home and they're going to school day after day, and they're either modeling the behavior of the parents at home, or they are not getting the attention, because parents, there's no space in a parent's brain actually to pay attention and to make a child feel like they're valued or they have worth. Then, that goes back to that imbalance of power. When they go into school, they're going to exercise their power in a way that, feels comfortable to them. And often it's aggression if they're seeing aggressive behavior at home.
So, and let me stick up for parents for a second, because as a parent, I know if I were hearing this, I'd be thinking, what? I'm being accused of teaching my kid bullying? And I think what I want to communicate here is that very often we can teach our children behaviors without really thinking about it. And I think that, well, let me throw some statistics at the world here. 76% of all couples fight about money. Right, period, the end. Like 76%, that's most couples fight about money, either not having enough of it, or it's going out faster than it's coming in, or someone's behavior. And the second that we're in as couples, that we're in some kind of conflicted dynamic, and an unhealthy conflict, not one where there's a lot of feeling and a lot of intensity of emotion, we could be in that moment demonstrating to our children a bullying behavior. We might be doing it unconsciously. We might be doing it consciously. When couples get fired up, they say all kinds of things to each other, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not. So it's not like we're saying that parents are out there teaching their children bullying behaviors as some kind of, master plan for their lives. It's more like a lot of times we model these behaviors without thinking about it. And that it is normal and natural for couples to have conflict. And when we're conflicted, we're often not thinking about the impact on the other person, much less the children who are collateral damage or innocent bystanders.
100%. And I am so happy that you're sticking up for parents, because I feel the same way. When I did give presentations and I ask parents, what do you want the most for your child? They never, ever, ever say, I want them to not respect others. I don't want, I want them to not respect themselves. They would never, that's not a conscious thing at all. I think that parents are, almost everyone is well-meaning. They certainly don't want to model this, but maybe they may not be aware of what they are modeling.
Absolutely. Well, I can testify as a parent that I've modeled all kinds of negative behaviors that I deeply regret looking back, but at the time I had no clue that it was even coming out until I saw it reflected back. And it's just the reality of being a human being, that we're all growing and developing, and we never do anything perfectly, and we all step in it, and everybody's child probably needs therapy no matter what. It's like, this is just how it is. Okay, so we have these children who are learning these behaviors. What are some of the signs that parents should look out for, that maybe they're having these kinds of interactions, that they're or have the possibility of being a recipient of bullying or a deliverer of bullying?
Well, I mean the kind of signs they're seeing in their own children.
Yeah.
You're right. I think there are a lot of them. And there's a flip side to this. A child can, in order to establish a little, power, can engage in bullying type of behavior, but other kids will go inward. So it all has to do with a little bit of anger, I think, or a lot of it does. So, the bullying behavior may be anger towards somebody. The child that goes inward is, maybe bringing the anger inward.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to check out both in your kids. And there are a lot of different ways. If their behavior is changing, if they're just not themselves, if you notice that if siblings at home, they're acting out and being a little bit more aggressive. Obviously, if you get a call from a school, be open-minded and listen to what the school has to say. It's very easy to get defensive. And all of it is understandable. But yes, I think just change in a child's behavior, demeanor, or their appetite, or how they're even interacting with the parents themselves.
And very interesting point. So we want to watch, number one, we want to watch their level of anger. And as you pointed out, some people internalize anger, some people or will externalize it. Or another way to put it would be, some people like conflict, some people are conflict avoidant. If they're conflict avoidant, they're probably going to have a tendency to internalize it. If they're more conflict oriented, they're going to externalize it. Another thing to do, you said, was to listen to feedback from the school and other parents and other kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you see these tendencies, what are your options? And I've got a feeling that this is where moms wearing jeans get to be superheroes.
Right. Yeah. Well, just two quick stories just as examples. Two moms' reactions. I know one mom that was in terrible conflict at the time, marriage. She and her husband owned a business that wasn't doing well. And she started to notice how aggressive her daughter was with her older sister, and then started putting two and two together. And she made me laugh. I ran into her and she said, I can't believe I just ran into you, because I just turned myself into the school. She said, I think I'm raising the mean girl. So I have to appreciate that. Then a different mom, I ran into her, and the school had called her because her daughter was in 8th grade at the time, and they were experiencing a lot of conflict at home. They had a child who had a drug abuse situation, things completely out of her control. But when the school called her, she completely defended her daughter's actions and said, well, that's what just young girls do. They're mean to each other. So the difference between the two is awareness, is just to say, hey, just stop and take an honest look at the behavior and then start to course correct. it's never okay to let a child continue to feel angry. You have to get to the bottom of the anger. And of course, kids have to be disciplined and told, between right and wrong. But it's really important to get down to the heart of it. And what kids want the most is to be listened to.
I think that's a human condition.
Mm-hmm.
The work that I do with couples is very much around teaching them how to release their own internal dialogue long enough to hear the other person so that they can reflect it back. Actually, in my previous incarnation, I was very entrepreneurial for 30 years. And the first thing we would teach anyone who was in the field was how to do reflective listening or mirroring. And so every employee had a mini notepad, and somebody would come up to them and say, da 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 da, whatever it was, however crazy it was, and they would say 1 minute, and they take out their notepad and they'd write down one feeling and one fact about what the person was saying, and they'd say, "Wow, Mrs. Raisch, it sounds like you really feel that fencing in trees is really bad and you're really angry about it." And they go, "That's right." And they say, "Well, I'll pass that on to my supervisor." And they'd say, "Thank you." And they'd be so thrilled that somebody had taken the time to hear that, instead of going, "Oh, you crazy person, why are you talking to me?" Because 95% of customer service issues is just like kids, just like couples, is people just need to be heard. Once they're heard, they're like, "Oh my God, this isn't just me, somebody else is in it with me."
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead.
No, and then in these cases, these kids were acting out rather aggressively, and it's about going back and teaching some skills and taking the time to teach those, and then modeling those as well. Assertiveness versus aggression. You can get what you want, but without being aggressive. But kids really, most of the time, need to be taught how to do that.
Yeah, maybe adults too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I find that very often in couples work, that the couples who come to me, there's at least one person who doesn't know any other way than to be aggressive. But then they find out, oh, I can stand for what I believe in without being hostile.
Right. With caring about how the other person feels about it.
So tell us more about your book and how it will help parents with this.
Well, as I mentioned before, one thing I did discover is there is no lack of great resources and great experts out there. I just found that most parents and teachers really did not know about them. And so I sort of took my experience as a publicist and decided, well, that's my little corner of the world. I can share these resources, because there is no one size fits all. Mm-hmm. Every single situation, I'm sure you find that in your practice and what you do, every single situation is different. Every dynamic is different. So, some people need different types of resources to help them. Mm-hmm. And that's why I wrote the book. I said, I'd feel bad if I didn't share these.
And so the book is, it sounds like it has a lot of resources in it.
That it's really its primary purpose is to share resources and to share what I felt the best researched, the most, the programs that were the most sustainable, the best tips, and I put them in a book.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly helpful, because it's really interesting. When I think back on when I was a child in bullying, I remember, actually, my parents weren't terribly available to talk to about it. So I remember in our school, the book Black Like Me came out, and there's this scene where the child comes back and says, "They took my lunch money," or I can't remember the details. It's been a long time since I read, but I remember the solution. The solution was, here's a baseball bat. Don't come home until you straighten this out with them. That is what I always thought the answer to bullying was to go out and beat the crap out of people. Now, mind you, I didn't do that much, but that's a misconception I had about it. And it sounds like if people have the right resources, that they understand that things can be different situationally, that there isn't a one size fits all solution. Actually, in that book, in that neighborhood at that time, who knows, that might have been the right answer, but that certainly isn't the right answer to all bullying situations.
No, and that is still part of people's mindset. to this day. And I think that is where some of the defensiveness sometimes comes in when a parent comes into a school, and teachers will report that back to me. When I'm, just sharing things with them, and they'll come back and say, "But the parent is actually enabling this behavior because they feel that that's strength." And so it's really changing the mindset of what does strength mean.
Yes, does not necessarily mean that you're the biggest bully. I guess
Right.
strength can be something completely different. And I believe that we're going to do this again, you and I. And folks, just so you know, the second topic is going to be about the risks the risk that kids don't have a trusted adult in their lives when they're experiencing bullying, that they don't have someone who can help them to understand what strength might really be.
Yes, and I look forward to that conversation.
Yeah, as do I. Actually, I think the most intriguing thing about when I heard you speak is that I sort of had this realization that, and I hadn't really thought about bullying until I heard you speak, by the way, was that, oh, yeah, it's not about this victim abuser rescuer dynamic. There's something else. It's actually a whole mind shift. There's the way we think about bullying, the way we experience as children, what we think the solution is. The solution is to be the biggest dog. And then there's a whole nother mindset that's completely different than that, and just a whole nother way to frame it so that children are more secure in themselves and know how to walk away and not feel less than when they walk away, or to help another child and not do it in a way that comes across as bullying. There's just a whole nother mindset that you can embrace. And that's what really drew me to want to have this interview. I just think it's like this fascinating idea.
That I know, I so appreciate that, because I often say that leadership is the anti-bully and leadership is skill building. And that's a very positive thing. So if we're aware of the skills that we can help our child with, that's good for the rest of their lives.
And hopefully there'll be some room to talk about parenting styles and some more, positive I think we talked a little bit today about how easy it is when you're in a relationship to de-evolve your dialogue to the point where you're modeling less than desirable behavior. But there are ways that you can consciously model positive behavior. Maybe we'll have an opportunity for that the next time we speak.
Oh, I look forward to that.
Hey, so the question I ask everyone towards the end is, what is the legacy you want to leave behind?
Again, I love that question. I would like my legacy to be that I helped kids by lifting up the trusted adult.
Got it. Help kids by lifting up the trusted adult. I like it.
Yeah, it's all about skill building.
I think I think it's going to be really interesting to explore. What is a trusted adult?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool. Hey, Susie, this has been great. How can people find you if they want to contact you?
It is simple. You just can go to tangledball.com, and all of my information is there.
Terrific. Well, listen, I want to thank you again for coming on the show, and I hope everyone's looking forward to the next episode, which will be out in a few weeks. But reach out to Susie, look at her website, buy the book. There's tons of resources. We're really encouraging you to dig deep or to deeply dig, because this is, I think I want to say that I think that bullying occurs. It's like everywhere. It's everywhere. I think bullying occurs on some level in pretty much every family. If we put bullying on a scale of 1 to 10, I think we've been talking about 8, 9, 10s, but I think that bullying can occur on much lower levels that we don't even notice or think about much, this is a really, really deep subject.
Thank you, Rich. We want to raise kind, confident kids. So I appreciate being with you today.
Thank you.